Hello from the English Language Center at the Ministry of Education in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. We will be working with the supervisors and the English language teachers in helping developing the fluency, the accuracy, and the literacy of students taking English in the public schools. My name is Eli Gazelle, and I have a team that we are working with together, and I hope that you and everyone watching this video can become a member of that team. Our motto is design, learn, and share, because learning is always happening, and this is a cyclical way of looking at things. Without further ado, let's start with what we're going to do. The first perspective that we start to need to move towards in this age is to start thinking of learning designers instead of teachers, because the classical sense of a teacher is somebody who teaches, but we all know that learning happens from a learning design. So we will further that as we move along. The most important thing is that we are not going to touch the structural system in the schools at the moment, and we're going to start from what we already have. So for example, if we have a page or 2 or 3 pages from the book, what we need to ask ourselves is the first question: what will each student learn by the end of a period and be able to apply in any other similar situation? But the more important question is not just what can they do, but how can they do it? What steps need to be taken? What needs to be found in order for a student to be able to do it? And because we live in the structural system of assessment, the next question is, well, since they learned it, how and what will a test tool look like? We will apply the same things on a number of grades to start with this month of November, and then we will start working with all the publications and all the grades and the teachers and the supervisors in the future. Now, to start with language learning, the first thing to think about is that all languages in the human minds share the same concepts, like who, what, action, how, where, when. This is how human beings communicate. Now, how we form that who, what, and action, and in which order we put them, changes from one language to another. But the basic concept in all human language is the ability to hear, understand, and produce the following details in a number of ways. So, for example, part of the learning process would be not to learn the words in the book, but to combine the words in the book to produce details. So an example would be, for example, let's say from a grade 4 book, is not apple for A, but rather use the words from the other pages to join with them to produce a detail of, let's say, a big red apple or a small black cat. This is the detail of what, and this will improve and build up as we move along. Now let's take this example again. If we take this page from a book, what is the real learning? Again, what we need to start thinking for the future is not to learn what's in the book, but to learn a skill that can be applied in any possible and similar situation. So for example, what we can see here is we have 3 parts of dialogues. And what the student needs to do is to put these 3 dialogues in order. That is called a sequence. Now, the learning should be, how can we learn something and how to do it that we can reapply this on any similar situation where we have a dialogue or a text that's broken up into 3 pieces and not in order, and still be able to find the order. So we need to find the details of action, the details of what, and the details of when. When you find those details and underline them, it is easier to tell each other what the sequence is. So this is the how of what we do. What has been observed in the classroom is that a student like Ibrahim and Mariam can learn better if they know what is expected of them and if it makes sense to them. So I'm going to start by trying to shed some light on 3 words. The first word that is used a lot in textbooks is the word exercise. Another word that is used is activity. The word I'm trying to use is a tool, and I'm going to try to shed some light about the differences. The first one, exercise. Well, to learn, you can't start with an exercise because the very word exercise means it can only be done after the learning has taken place. And another problem with exercise, it's repetitive and boring. It keeps doing the same thing with the belief that if you do it often enough, learning will happen. The second word, activity, is usually designed for a one-time use only. A person in the classroom, an educator, a teacher would find an activity, believes that the activity is good for the students, but many times we don't know if it results in learning or not, and sometimes the students have difficulty in understanding what to do. So the teacher has to go around and talk to every student to tell them what to do because the first instructions were not understood. A tool is different, is in the sense it can be reused with new learning and other situations. It is designed to promote the thinking process. So activity can be done, but the person needs to know first how to do it, and exercise only happens after learning, whereas a tool can be used for learning and for assessment, as we will demonstrate. So the first question is, how can a student, so we're going to start from the bottom moving up, rather from how to teach, rather what is the end of the learning. So I have here on the bottom, it's called a performance tool design. And a performance tool will show what a student can do after 4 hours or 8 hours or a month or a term of learning. And we're not talking about the traditional test because, as we all know, a test may shed light on the student's learning, but then again, may not. So a performance tool is when we bring together all the skills and knowledge and put them together for a performance. And to demonstrate, first of all, it's a pre-designed task for a grade level. It shows the student's ability to use what was learned, and the tool will include viewing, listening, speaking, and writing, not necessarily all of them, depending on the level of the student. An example of performance task can be in dialogue, giving and receiving details, giving and receiving instructions, giving and receiving information. To start with, here is a tool for a dialogue. If you notice here, it's called the request dialogue. One student has these, and the other student has these. They cannot see each other's cards. So the first student goes, Ibrahim, she's talking to him, and of course Ibrahim is going to answer with yes, and she's going to request a crayon. Now, this is the very beginning of the level, and the children are going to make the dialogue using one word each. So she goes, crayon, please. Now, he doesn't know what color to give her, so he goes, blue. And of course, because she has red, she's going to say, no. So he's going to ask her, red, and she's going to say, yes. So now he's going to find out how many she needs. So he's going to ask her 2, and she's going to say, of course, because of this, no. And he's going to ask her if she wants 3. He goes 3, and she's going to say yes. And of course, he's going to say here. And she will say thanks, and he will say you're welcome. Now, this is a tool because once you learn how to do it, you can reapply it on any set of words. You can apply it on entertainment, you can apply it in the playground for playing, but notice that part of exchange and dialogue is not just the words, but the intonation of the voice. So if we change request dialogue to offer dialogue, so again, to show how the same cards will work if you're offering, now she is going to offer And she's going to say Ibrahim, and he's going to say yes. And she's going to ask him, crayon? Because he has crayon, he's going to say yes. Okay? Notice the tone of voice. Crayon? It means, do you want a crayon? And he's going to say, I'm sorry, yes. And of course, he's going to ask her, blue crayon? Now, it's not necessary to say two words at the beginning, but this will build up as we move along. And of course, because he has red, he's going to say no. And then she will ask him if he wants a red one. Red? And he will say yes. And she will ask him if he wants two. She'll go two. And he will say no. And she will ask him if he wants three. Three. And he will say yes. And she will say here. And he will say thanks. And she will say. So this is what a tool is. A tool can be reused. Let's have a look at another tool now for details. If we look at this picture, we want to form. Now the pictures will always be for words that the children have already studied in their, or learned in their textbooks. But if we look here at the picture, we're going to form details that make a what. So these details can be spoken or can be written. So for example, some of the details would be like big green dinosaur or small yellow car. So this is the culmination of learning. This cannot happen in one period. This happens because of the learning that has taken place over a range of periods. So here are some examples. Big green dinosaur, if you look at the bottom. Small yellow car. Slow little turtle. It is a tool because all we need to do is change the picture and use pictures for that compose or are composites of what they have learned for words that they have learned in their books. And let's look at now a where detail. In a jungle, in a small yellow car, on the ground. So we will choose pictures, but this is considered a tool because it can be used over and over again with just a different picture for the words that they are learning. And this is a performance design, which I'm saying is the end of the learning rather than the start of the lesson plan. Now, for this to happen, we need focal point tools. A focal point tool is a pre-designed end-of-period task that lets the student use the learning in a new situation or helps him or her to conceptualize the learning of that particular period. So a focal point is at the end of the 40 minutes. So something that takes like 5 to 10 minutes in every period. From what we have noticed in the classroom, the teachers may have an objective, but may not have a design that is the ending or the conversions of that learning. So again, we're going to work with everyone to design focal points that can be used on any book, because in the end, all the books have vocabulary, details, sentences, paragraphs. So the tool is more of a learning tool than rather just a testing tool. Here's an example. Again, we're going to say vocabulary, detail, and more on that later. Now, here's a tool that can be reused. If I say one of the colors and one of the numbers, and the other child takes the picture and puts it on the right square, it means one person can say the word for the picture, and the other person can hear the word and know which picture it belongs to. So if I remember correctly, red 3 ball. The child goes red 3 and puts the ball here. Or green 2 boat. So the other child does not see this. He hears green 2 boat. Now again, I hope I got this right. The other child puts it in the right square. So if you notice that this is a tool where 2 or more can use together, it is like a game, but that's the whole idea of what game is. It's an attention builder, and a game helps the child be engaged. Now, to show how this is a tool, we can do the same tool on letters, on words, and any other new word that you have learned. But what is important here also is that we also review the colors and the numbers without having to do it over and over in the traditional, what color is this, repeat after me. Here is another tool for a higher level, again for vocabulary. And if you notice at the top, we have 40 tools. So we're going to work with you to either share or design ones that are more appropriate or suitable or innovative from your side. So here are the instructions. Read the text. For each word in red, find one sentence or example and write it on the line. So there is the word cup, and the student reads this and finds a sentence that goes with cup. Dad is drinking coffee, and writes it there. Tree, okay, which one goes with tree? He sees a bird. So notice how we're doing higher thinking skill of inference. Now, this is not for a grade 4, obviously, at the moment, but it can be in a couple of years. Now, why is this a tool? Well, it is a tool because all we need to do for the next time is change the story here and change the words that they have learned. And it can be reused and reused. So, what is a module going to look like? The module is going to depend on the grade that we're talking about. It could be from 4 to 8, depending on the number of periods. We will work on that together. So every period ends with a focal point. And again, as I said, between 4 and 8, depending on the grade level. And all of these focal point tools culminate in a performance design. Now, remember, we haven't gone into the classroom to teach yet. We're still in the design stages. Once we have all of these, we need to do the traditional, because this is the way the system works. There is a quiz, there is an exam, and all right, we're going to do it. But it, again, is pre-designed template, but it is made up of the focal point tasks that have been learned by the student. So, for example, what they have learned is that we will put the same focal point in the test. For example, the picture with the words that they have to make details, or if they have learned how to make, let's say, words for the picture in the classroom as a focal point, they need to do the same thing, but by circling the letters. So it's going to look like this now. This is the design. There is a focal point that can be used on any book, because all the books contain words. There is the performance design. We should be able to use it on any book, because that is what we call learning a language. We are not learning the book, we are learning the language. So the performance design will show that language has been attained, and we will create the assessment design framework. The last one is the learning design plan. Now, if we go back, most teachers and training start from how to teach. We have found that if a teacher and a student knows where they're going, it's easier to design a learning plan. And I changed that from lesson plan because it's a design plan. The first thing in the learning design, it has to be jigsaw task, which means one task results in a need for another task. So it is a set of tools. It's not just one activity. It's probably 2 to 5 tools within one period that are short. They are connected, and at the end of the period, they reach the focal point ability. Now, in order to design learning, there are 3 basic principles that we need to adhere to. Principle number 1 is we need to maximize the amount of learning experience per individual. So that means who can tell me will result in one student giving an answer. If we change the same question, tell each other in pairs the answer to my question, we have increased the amount of learning experience per individual. The second principle is to make the learning experiences connect to form a concept. So why did we do task number 2, tool number 2? Because it connects to number 1. Why did we do number 3? Because it connects to number 2. And finally, honestly, without social interaction, learning is not learning. So what do we mean by social interaction? It's when two students have to talk to each other in order to do a tool. Now, here is a tool for a higher grade. Draw a web like the one below. Write what you expect a hotel to have in each circle. Now, we can reuse this on any topic or word in any textbook. And what we want to do is to start bringing this tool down to a level of grade 4 by putting, let's say, for example, a house, and what do you expect to have in a house. Another tool is the ability to classify. So if we have, let's say, pictures in a book, and we read the title of each article, we can use a classification system. So a tool simply means changing the headings and this, but reusing the same system. So what we're going to have in our design is very simple. There will be a module. The module can be used on any unit and any book because it is language after all. So there is a performance design, there is a focal point, there is the assessment or the test framework. Now we can start designing the learning for each one. And honestly, when we do this, it can be reapplied on any unit in the book because most of the units in the book are structured in the same way. So coming back one more time, to understand what we're trying to do, we are not learning the dialogue. We are learning how to sequence, for example, 3 separate places. Now, when you go to take an IELTS exam, you have a similar question, sequence. So the ability to sequence will depend on your ability to find the right details and put something in sequence. Thank you from the English Language Center, and remember, our motto is design, learn, share. And we can be reached on elc@moe.gov.sa. My name is Eli Gazelle, and I look forward to working with you, everyone, individually over the coming years. Thank you very much.